budget papers be noted. The honourable member for Huon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, the state budget has failed my electorate of Huon again. The biggest budget since World War II has been unveiled to Tasmanians, but what does it actually mean for the people in my regional electorate? Each and every year, the state government releases a budget to much anticipation, and this year, expectations were exceptionally high. Premier Godwin labelled this budget the largest and most significant infrastructure programme in the state's history. However, I'm left asking what this actually means for my community in the Huon. This budget needed to send a very strong response to the social and economic issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, yet it has failed. The budget needed to address the significant rise of unemployment, yet it has failed. There is no JEPS plan to get ordinary Tasmanians back to work, and no vision for what our great state actually could become. The rating agency Moody's graded this budget as a provisional fail. And the government should be worried about that. Risking a downgrade by a credit rating agency such as Moody's is the very last thing you want to see under those circumstances. It's just irresponsible to lock in debt, deficit, and record unemployment without having much to show for. Mr. President, looking through the budget papers, there is very little in there for my region. $7.5 million have been promised again and indeed re-announced for the Channel Highway diversion in Huonville. A funding allocation I commend, and one that is very much needed. However, there's really not much else. And it's really interesting that the Honourable Leader was referring to the glossy summary that came with the comprehensive budget paper as cheat sheets. And cheating they actually do. They do. That's why the Honourable Leader calls them cheat sheets. It's not new money. There's no additional funding. It's just a carryover from last year. It'll probably be in the glossy cheat sheet for next year's budget as well. It's actually quite misleading. So here it says, $7.5 million for the Channel Highway diversion at Huonville. It was last year. There's nothing new. The same thing again. So really, the so-called cheat sheet is more propaganda than really anything else. And another thing is, it says it delivers delivery of the new Huntingfield land release project, a subdivision that will provide, around 470 residential lots. The planning application hasn't even been approved yet. That's still with the local planning authority. Hasn't been delivered, hasn't even been approved yet. There's just been applications submitted. But it's already in the propaganda sheet issued by the government there. As a regional and rural community, we are in dire need of substantial and genuine funding, yet it appears we've been left off the map once again. No funding to make our roads safer, no funding to improve regional public transport options, no funding for more community nurses, no funding for better ambulance services. We actually don't ask much in my electorate, but funding for decent roads and essential health services in the community should be a given, even under the most challenging economic circumstances. The government has failed to deliver the jobs and funding that we need to recover from the pandemic. And we in the Huon have once again been grouped in with other regions when it comes to funding allocation. So on paper, it looks like we will be getting some funding for something, but in reality, we probably won't. So there's a $24.4 million allocation for rural and regional health facility works that includes and mentioned the Signal Community Health Centre and the Huonville Community Health Centre. But how much funding will we actually get? It's completely not clear. There's been 175.5.
You can ask that next week.
I certainly will. I certainly will. There's been $175.5 million allocated as part of the Greater Hobart Traffic Solution. But how much that actually flows down to the Huon is completely unclear. So I suspect rather than dollars, it's going to be a couple of cents if we are lucky enough. But it looks great. It looks really great, in the little glossy sheets that we are getting.
Park and ride. Park and ride.
Park and ride to where?
Park and
Down to
ride.
Jeeves.
It's a mirage.
You can park in Jeeves and ride.
So we've heard this all before. It's all promises and actually no delivery. And it's not appropriate to be big on announcements, yet very light on specific detail. A state budget is not meant to leave everybody guessing. I could go on, but once again, my community has been grouped in with Kingborough and other regional areas with very little money directed to the unique issues my community is actually facing. We've heard about, high schools in Hobart, but Huonville High School in Huonville is actually a very good example. It was good enough for the Premier to visit for a photo opportunity in August, but it wasn't on his radar when it came to allocating funding. That's despite the Mercury reporting at the time of the Premier's visit that the school's devotion to renewable energy had saved the government $42,000. And they passed it on back to the government. They gave it back to the government. Does the school community not
Maybe
deserve...
they can use that at Montello.
Well, does the school community not deserve a reward for their hard work?
Of course they do.
Of course they do. Of course they do. An outstanding effort to focus on renewable energy saves the government $42,000, and what they get is a visit by the Premier for a photo op, and that's it.
He said he'd look into it.
And that's it.
When he was
Well, he
there.
hasn't. It's not in the budget paper. It's not even in the glossy brochure. There's nothing in there, nothing for Huonville. So it's all nice and well to talk about multi-million dollars, school projects somewhere else, but for us in the Huon, nothing. That's the wrong signal for my rural community. It's the wrong signal for our rural education system. It's the wrong signal for our students in Huonville. Because they think, what's the point? We are just a prop. This is not the only key project in our community that has been forgotten about. With no funding allocated to any roads other than the previously mentioned and previously announced and previously committed Channel Highway diversion. Regional public transport has been ignored, as has funding for our local sports grounds. And it's great to support a multi-million-dollar sports and entertainment centre in Hobart, but this government also made a deliberate decision to neglect local sports clubs in my region. I've spoken about the historic Franklin Velodrome here in this chamber before. And it's just one of many sporting venues in our regional communities that may not have any significant commercial, marketing, or PR value, but in those local communities, sports grounds that keep our communities together. It's essential for them. It does keep our communities together. They are enabling and enhancing community cohesion, in particular in tough times.
Is that just past the Wooden Boat Trust
It is.
on the left as you're going south?
That's right. It's fabulous. As I mentioned, since the 1930s, historic value, completely neglected. If you want to remove the bitumen, it costs you as much as it would cost to resurface it. Why are we not resurfacing it? There's been no funding to address the serious issue of coastal erosion. Our communities are crying out for those issues to be addressed. I tabled a petition on that on Tuesday. Seriously, in your multi-billion-dollar allocation for infrastructure and construction, you could not make any allowance for regional communities to protect them from the inevitable effects of coastal erosion? You are choosing to leave those small communities to their own. No help, no support, nothing. So this budget has not only failed us in the Huon, but it has failed all Tasmanians. It certainly has failed our health system. Again, every year the state budget features the same headline. It's the same headline every year. Record investment in health. Every year we hear about more beds and better health services for all Tasmanians. It's the same old Liberal approach to health policy. The appealing promise of record investments is as broken as the Liberal government's approach to health policy. Tasmanians who have been waiting for necessary surgery for years, Tasmanians who are often forced to wait for ambulances for hours, Tasmanians who find themselves in overcrowded emergency departments, have experienced on their own that spin doctors rather than real doctors are in charge of our health system. And since 2014, the Liberal government has diverted $1.6 billion from the Tasmanian health system. $1.6 billion. Reckless as the government was then, trickling back essential funding just to keep health services at a very basic level should be at the very least result in a more humble approach to health policy, rather than trumpeting out misleading headlines that make no difference to patients or health professionals. At the very least, Tasmanians should have expected genuine support to stay healthy and well. Under the Liberal government, our health system has become dependent on expensive locum doctors and agency nurses. Yet, in this year's budget, there is not even a hint of a health workforce strategy and training plan. Not even a hint. It means that we'll never have enough health professionals to look after patients in our hospitals. The Mersey Hospital Emergency Department already had to close recently because of staff shortages.
And locums cost more, don't they? Right?
Significantly more. Substantially more. $2,500 per shift, for an emergency doctor now.
All care and no responsibility.
Plus car, plus accommodation, plus. $2,500 per shift.
Over and above the doctor that's permanent.
That's right. So the Mersey had to close because of staff shortages. And are patients now expected just to wait outside closed doors in the future too? Is that how far it's come? Again, this year budget contains nothing to support cost-effective health promotion programs.
Mr. President, the Mersey Dam you're talking about
Yes, that's right.
only closed overnight. It wasn't closed 24 hours.
From 6 to 8 o'clock, 60% of presentations occur between 6 o'clock in the evening.
I appreciate that, but
60% of patients who are showing up didn't have anywhere to look after them.
Yeah.
And they call a hotline, and then the transport comes up, and then somehow an ambulance will take them to the Launceston General. 60% of patients at the Mersey Hospital are presenting between 6 and 8. And we've closed them. It's a mirage. It's not a health service. Over and over again. So there's nothing on reducing expensive hospital admissions by supporting care in our community. And by ignoring health prevention and community care programs, this government remains penny wise but pound foolish. This is not how to manage a health budget. The government has given up caring. It doesn't even pretend it does anymore. Greyhound Racing, for example, received 16 times more funding than Palliative Care Tasmania. 16 times more than palliative care. And I don't mind supporting sports, but not when it comes at a cost of supporting terminally ill patients.
Be interesting to know how many people are employed in palliative care across the state.
Sure, I'm going to ask that question next week. So it just makes me sad. Under the Premier's leadership, the Health Minister has morphed into the Minister for waiting lists, bed blocks and ambulance ramping. And this budget contains nothing to change that. Yet I can hear the spin doctors congratulating themselves. It's about cheat sheets and glossy brochures after all, and should leave patients very worried indeed. Mr. President, I'd like to conclude with an appraisal of this budget by Tasmanian economist John Lawrence, just in today's The Mercury. And I might just read it out to you. So John Lawrence, Tasmanian economist, says, announcing the largest and most significant infrastructure program in the state's history, then failing to include that spending in the deficit calculation is deceptive. The actual cash deficit for this year will be 2.1 billion. In 21-22, the cash deficit will be 1.07 billion, followed by 656 million the year after. That's a whole lot different to what the Premier might like us to believe. The Premier uses the generic term deficit for the net operating balance figure. As its name suggests, the latter only includes operating expenses, wages for instance, not capital outlays, roads and schools, for example. This is not a semantic quibble. The point that needs to be understood is that a positive net operating balance does not mean there will be cash surpluses to reverse the growth in net debt. There is little prospect of that occurring anytime soon. And he continues, in this budget we will continue to leverage our strong balance sheet to stimulate our economy, the Premier said. More sugarcoating. The balance sheet at June 2020 was the smallest for more than 15 years, and it's about to get a whole lot smaller. By June 21, the government's net worth will be 6 billion. On that figure, 4.7 billion is the net worth of government business. Aside from them, the government's net worth will only be 1.3 billion. Smaller than the Hobart City Council. Smaller than the Hobart City Council. So let's not pretend we have a strong balance sheet when a cursory glance reveals the exact opposite. And I carry on because it's a very good read. The legacy of the Hodgman government as one of conspicuous failure on the fiscal front is now glaringly obvious. Despite the problems on its doorstep, the government didn't feel the need to alter any of its 6 fiscal strategies. Expense growth will be less than revenue growth, meaning the underfunding gap will continue to widen. There is no attempt to look for other revenue sources. In the final 2 years of the forward estimates, there will be just enough revenue after operating expenses to cover the extra interest, meaning all the state's capital spending will be required for borrowed funds. The task ahead will be extremely difficult. However, not to present a more detailed outline of possibilities ahead after delaying the budget for 6 months is remiss. If we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that there is large need for more public services. The budget is a temporary band-aid, not a long-term plan. The Premier signed off this budget speech by saying, the government has done it before and we will do it again. That's the scary part. It hasn't done anything to fix our underlying problems. If inaction continues, we are doomed. If inaction continues, we are doomed.
Sounds like it might need to be taken over by the Hobart City Council.
Well, they seem to be in a much stronger fiscal position than the state government.
Well, is your party willing to engage in a discussion around revenue?
So I certainly note the budget, Mr. President, and I'm very much looking forward to budget estimates next week. Thank you.